That's the trespassing beast, Karen screamed, pointing at a fluffy therapy goat wearing a pink vest. I didn't laugh. I didn't even blink. I just raised my Senate ID and said, "You might want to hear the full story before you decide who's actually trespassing. Ever been called a threat for letting your goat wander 20 feet from your fence? I have. My name's Daniel McCoy. I'm a retired U.S. Senator, a Marine, and a man who spent more time staring down bureaucracy than I care to admit. But nothing prepared me for the hellstorm known as Karen from Whispering Pines. You might laugh. You might think I'm exaggerating. But before you do, let me tell you what really happened on that quiet Arizona morning when my therapy goat, Tinkerbell, walked across the invisible line separating freedom from HOA tyranny. It started, like most trouble does, with peace. The kind of peace you earn, not the kind handed to you. After decades in the Capitol, debates that drag past midnight, and the kind of backroom deals that rot your soul from the inside out, I retired. Not to a yacht, not to a mansion, but to a slice of land just outside a gated community, a ranch where I could smell dust, hear crickets at night, and most importantly, heal. My wife had passed after a brutal fight with cancer. I didn't know how to live without her, but I knew I couldn't keep pretending to care about bills I no longer believed in or shaking hands I couldn't stand. What saved me wasn't therapy or time. It was a goat. Tinkerbell. A fluffy white belle, wearing little soul with more heart than most senators I've known. She doesn't talk, doesn't judge, but she walks beside me every morning, and some days that's enough. After losing Elaine, I found myself spiraling, drinking too much, sleeping too little, forgetting the point of it all. Tinkerbell didn't cure me. She just sort of showed up every morning with the same gentle bleat, nudged my hand, and walked the fence line with me. That little ritual reminded me I was still here, still needed, that sometimes a goat is more loyal than a party line. So when I bought the land, acres of open range touching but not belonging to Whispering Pines HOA, I made sure it was mine, free and clear. No shared covenants, no fine print, no meddling committees, just dirt, sky, and the freedom to live without someone measuring the length of my grass. I didn't know Karen then. I didn't know about her clipboard, her obsession with control, or the way she ruled that neighborhood like a one-woman regime. Not yet. When I moved in, she played nice. Cookies at the gate. A smile too tight to be real. "Welcome to Whispering Pines," she sang. "It's a wonderful community. I'm head of the HOA, by the way, so if you ever have questions about landscaping standards or noise compliance, I won't," I said, not unkindly. "I'm not under the HOA." That smile flickered. Just a second. But I saw it. Like a light switch, inside her flipped from friendly to threat detected. She said, "Oh, that's interesting," and walked away. Now, let me pause here. Maybe you're nodding, maybe you're smirking, because you know someone like her. The kind of person who can't breathe unless they're in charge. Who needs to feel needed and feared at the same time? Karen wasn't a neighbor. She was an HOA warlord in pearls and pastel, and I, apparently, had trespassed on her imagined kingdom. The first strike was subtle. A note taped to my gate. "Please mow to HOA standard height, 3 inches. No signature. Just authority masquerading a suggestion." I ignored it. Then came the comments. "That gravel driveway is a bit rustic for the area." Wind chimes? Really? They're a bit chaotic. Then she walked up my porch one day and said, "Your fence clashes with the neighborhood aesthetic." I almost choked on my sweet tea. "Ma'am," I said, "I didn't know wood could clash with itself." She didn't laugh. Karen never laughed unless she was winning. But I didn't fight back. Not yet. I figured she'd burn herself out trying to corral someone she couldn't find or control. I kept to myself. Tended the land. Hosted weekend goat yoga for local veterans, including a few old friends dealing with PTSD. Tinkerbell, decked out in her pink, certified therapy goat vest, became a local legend. Becky, my neighbor down the road, helped knit it. Her boys loved feeding Tinkerbell apples. We had peace, damn it. Real peace. Until I made a mistake. One morning, I forgot to latch the side gate. I'd been repairing fence posts and left it open while fetching more tools. Tinkerbell, ever the explorer, waddled out and wandered 20 feet beyond the fence onto a walking trail that edged whispering pines. She wasn't grazing in someone's rose garden. She wasn't head-butting joggers. She was sniffing wildflowers and hopping over flat stones like a ballerina with hooves. That's when Karen saw her. I was inside pouring iced tea when I heard this screeching, high-pitched, apocalyptic wail. No, no bad goat. Go back. You're trespassing. I ran outside and saw her, arms flailing like she was swatting bees or leading an exorcism. Tinkerbell stood still, ears twitching, blinking like, "Lady, are you okay?" That's when Karen stormed off, phone in hand. 2 minutes later, sirens. Not one, not two, but 3 sheriff's cruisers and an animal control van. Lights flashing like someone had reported a tiger on the loose. I stepped outside just in time to see Karen pointing at Tinkerbell like General Patton planning an assault. "That's the trespassing beast," she cried. "It's dangerous. I demand it be impounded." The deputies didn't laugh, but they were confused. "Ma'am," one said carefully, "that's a goat." "A trespassing goat," she barked. "Aggressive. It could attack a child or spread diseases." That's when I walked up, leash in one hand, Senate ID in the other. Tinkerbell followed beside me, calm as ever. When Karen saw what I was holding, her face drained like someone just unplugged her soul. Silence. The deputies blinked. The animal control officer looked at his clipboard, then at me. "Is that what I think it is?" one deputy asked. I nodded. "Yes. I'm a sitting U.S. Senator. And that goat? She's my certified therapy partner." Dead. Silence. Karen opened her mouth, closed it. "You can't be serious," she whispered. I didn't answer her. I looked at the officer and said, "You might want to hear the whole story before deciding who's actually trespassing." So here we are. This isn't a story about a goat. It's about control, about a woman who thought her clipboard outweighed the Constitution. It's about what happens when you stop playing defense and start planting your boots into the soil you own. And if you've ever been pushed, bullied, regulated, or talked down to by someone who thinks power gives them purpose, then this story, my story, is yours too. It started with a goat, but it's ending with something bigger. You ready? Because that HOA line they drew in the dirt, I'm about to step right over it. She didn't stop after the goat. You'd think that after calling 911, embarrassing herself in front of half the county, and nearly getting herself cited for misuse of emergency services, Karen might have paused, reflected, taken a yoga class. Instead, she reloaded. Because some people, when they lose control, don't let go. They double down. And if you've ever been on the receiving end of someone else's power trip, you already know how that story goes. They don't want peace. They want surrender. The very next morning, I walked out to feed the animals, and there it was, staked into the dirt at the edge of my property, red letters screaming like sirens, notice, illegal livestock operation. Remove all animals or face fines. No signature, no legal seal. Just a cheap laminate print taped to the back of a fake HOA memo, and beneath that, a photo. A photo of Tinkerbell. Someone had drawn a giant red X over her face. Now, I don't know what kind of person looks at a therapy goat and decides to wage psychological warfare, but apparently that kind lives 2 houses down and hosts monthly compliance brunches with mimosas and rage. I stared at that sign for a long time. It wasn't just petty. It wasn't even just mean. It was threatening. And something about that stupid red X kicked something in my gut. This wasn't about goats anymore. This was about who gets to decide who belongs and who doesn't. I took the sign inside, trying to keep the old McCoy temper on a leash. Randy was already up, sharpening fence nails and sipping strong black coffee like it was war fuel. I handed him the sign. He read it once, then twice. So now she's threatening livestock? He muttered. She's crossing lines. I nodded. We're not escalating, I said, though every cell in my body was screaming for a fight. We handle it with law and grace. Randy snorted. Grace, huh? You sure she deserves it? No, I said, but we do. I called Jane, the local deputy. A good man, solid boots, solid mind. He'd served with my brother overseas, and I trusted him like I trusted few men still breathing. I told him about the sign. He didn't even hesitate. That's targeted intimidation, he said flatly. Want me to come take a report? Yes, I replied. But quiet for now. No sirens. No scene. Jean showed up later in plain clothes, took photos, bagged the sign as evidence, and shook his head like a man who's seen too much idiocy and still gets surprised. She really doesn't know who she's messing with, he muttered. I don't want to pull rank, I said. I just want her to stop. We'll keep it legal, he promised. But keep your boots on. This ain't over. It wasn't. Because when bullies fail at one tactic, they pivot. They don't apologize. They regroup. And the next shot didn't come at me. It came at Becky. Becky is my neighbor on the other side of the HOA line. Single mom, school teacher, stronger than she looks and twice as kind. She's one of the good ones. The kind of person who shows up with soup when you're sick and never asks for anything in return. She also happens to bring her kids over to my ranch every now and then. They help with chores. They laugh with Tinkerbell. It's harmless, it's wholesome, and apparently it's heresy. She showed up on my porch one afternoon, pale and shaken. Daniel, she said, clutching a crumpled piece of paper. Karen filed a complaint against me. I took the paper. It was a formal letter from the HOA board, of which Karen was still queen bee, accusing Becky of violating multiple codes by associating with non-compliant properties and subjecting minor residents to unauthorized livestock exposure. I swear to God. They made playing with a goat sound like a federal crime. Becky bit her lip. She said I'm unfit to raise my kids in a compliant environment, that I'm promoting farm culture, that I'm undermining community standards. I felt my fist clench. She's going after your kids now? Becky nodded. Her voice cracked. All because they like feeding Tinkerbell after school. I took the paper, folded it neatly, and slid it into a file. No one, I said, voice steady, goes after the innocent on my watch. That night, I stayed up late, reviewing deed records, zoning laws, HOA jurisdiction maps. I printed every legal exemption, every clause proving my ranch was sovereign land. Then I did something I hadn't done in a while. I called a friend in the state attorney general's office. I'm not looking for favors, I told him. Just readiness. He understood. But Karen wasn't just trying to intimidate. She was trying to isolate. That's what power abusers do. They pick off your allies one by one. Make the ground under you feel lonelier and smaller until you start to think maybe they're right. Maybe you don't belong. Maybe peace means giving up just a little. But peace built on submission isn't peace. It's quiet tyranny. A few days passed. I thought maybe, just maybe, she was done. Then came the letter. No return address. No name. Just an envelope slipped into my mailbox like poison into a well. Inside was a typed page. Senator or not, your presence here is disruptive. You have brought livestock, outsiders, and attention to our peaceful community. Leave quietly, or we will ensure you are removed, legally or otherwise. Now I've faced threats in my life. I've had protesters outside my office. I've had people scream at me in Senate hearings. I've gotten death mail after casting tough votes. But there was something about that letter, so clean, so calculated, that felt different. It wasn't passion. It was policy. Someone thought they had the right to erase me. That same day, Randy came running into the barn, red in the face. You better come see this, he said. I followed him to the front pasture. Parked just beyond the fence was a black SUV. Engine running, tinted windows, one man in the driver's seat, another with a camera pointed at the barn, at Tinkerbell, at us. When they saw us approach, the SUV peeled off, tires spraying gravel like threats. We're being watched, I said quietly. They're gathering something. Dirt? Randy asked. A case, I said, or leverage. I won't lie to you. That night, I sat on the porch with a loaded shotgun across my lap and my old military jacket over my shoulders. Tinkerbell curled at my feet, munching a carrot like the world wasn't shaking under us. I watched the tree line, the stars, the shadow that wouldn't let us rest. And I knew we weren't in a spat with a neighborhood busybody anymore. We were in a fight with a system, a petty, poisonous hoe, deep state that couldn't stand a man they couldn't control. 3 days later, I got my answer. At dawn, they were shouting. I ran outside. Karen was back, marching down the trail with two clipboard-wielding enforcers in matching polo shirts. I'm invoking emergency nuisance protocols, she declared, waving a petition. 30 signatures. We demand this ranch be annexed into HOA jurisdiction, effective immediately. I took the paper, recognized a few names, people I'd waved to at the grocery store, others I didn't know at all. You can't do this, I said. I'm not under your jurisdiction. Karen's eyes gleamed. We'll see about that. And in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't about noise, or goats, or grass height. This was about power, about what happens when small people get a little authority and decide they're gods. But I wasn't kneeling. Not today. Not ever. I looked her in the eye. You just made a very serious mistake, I said. Is that a threat? She spat. No, I said, turning back toward my porch. It's a promise of truth. Behind me, Tinkerbell bleated softly, like she knew, like she was ready. And I swear, in that still desert air, the wind itself felt like it was holding its breath, because the real war hadn't started. Not yet. But it was coming. And it wouldn't just be about property lines. It would be about how far one man would go to protect peace in a goat named Tinkerbell. You ever feel it before the sky changes? That eerie stillness where even the birds forget to sing? I felt it the night it all came crashing down. It started like most nights, quiet, steady, safe. Tinkerbell was curled in her pen, wearing that little pink vest Becky had knitted for her. Randy was in the tool shed, oiling hinges and sorting out barbed wire coils for the next morning's fence repairs. I was sitting on the porch, sipping tea, watching the sun slip behind the ridgeline. It should have been a perfect evening, but my gut told me otherwise. I'd learned to trust that feeling. The same instinct that kept me alive in war zones was now twitching on home soil. And it was right. At 2:11 a.m., my phone rang. I sat bolt upright. It was Randy. Sir, you need to get out here. Now. I didn't wait for more. I grabbed my boots, threw on a jacket, and ran. Smoke. Thick black smoke curling up from the west side of the ranch, glowing orange against the night like a fever dream. The tool shed was on fire, raging like someone had poured gasoline in prayers for chaos. Randy was already there, swinging an extinguisher, his face soaked in sweat and soot. They called it in, he shouted over the crackle of flames. Well, we've got another problem. I looked where he pointed. Tinkerbell's pen, empty. Gate wide open. Latch dangling like a broken promise. My heart stopped. That goat never wandered far on her own. She knew her boundaries. She knew her routine. And there wasn't a chance in hell she undid that latch herself. Someone had opened it. Someone had come onto my land in the dead of night, torched a building, and taken my therapy partner like she was some prop in a sick intimidation game. The fire engine showed up minutes later. The sheriff's deputies not far behind. I paced in the gravel as they soaked the smoldering ruins. Tools melted. Ropes burned, feed bags blackened to ash, and no sign of Tinkerbell. Gene Wilcox arrived last. He didn't speak at first. Just walked the scene slowly, jaw tight, eyes scanning every footprint in the dirt. This is arson, he finally said. Deliberate. And theft, I added. That goat isn't just property. She's a registered therapy animal. They took her. Gene looked at me long and hard. Any idea who'd do this? I didn't hesitate. I've got one guess, and she walks with a limp. Karen. She twisted her ankle chasing a kid for walking his dog without a bag last month. I didn't need a crystal ball to know who had motive, history, and enough delusion to think this was some kind of righteous crusade. But guesses don't get warrants. Evidence does. You got security footage? Gene asked. I nodded. Trail cam out by the pasture. Picks up anything near the back fence. I sprinted to the house, booted up my laptop, and pulled the files. Gene and I watched in silence as the timestamp rolled. 1:57 a.m. There she was. A figure in a hoodie, creeping low near the tool shed. She carried a plastic container, poured it along the base, then struck a match. Fire bloomed in seconds. In the flickering light, we saw the figure limp toward the goat pen, unlatch the gate, slip a rope over Tinkerbell's neck, and walk her away like she owned her. Jean leaned back. That's enough for a warrant. I exhaled, but I knew it wasn't victory. Not yet. Karen wouldn't confess. And the neighborhood, it was still under her spell, or her fear. I needed a voice. I needed people to see the truth. So I went door to door. Becky answered first, her eyes already red. I heard about the fire. About Tinkerbell. She's gone, I said. And I think Karen did it. I showed her the still image from the video. Becky gasped. Will you testify if it comes to it? She hesitated. She's already made my life miserable, she whispered. Then she looked at me, steel behind the tears. Yes, for you, for Tinkerbell. By that afternoon, I held a press conference from the edge of my land. Not as a senator, as a man, a neighbor, a rancher. I held up a photo of Tinkerbell and said, last night, someone broke onto my property, set fire to my shed, and stole a registered therapy goat that helps me and other veterans cope with trauma. This is no longer a neighborhood feud. This is criminal, and it will not be ignored. The story blew up. Local news, then national. The hashtag Justice for Tinkerbell trended by sunset. Messages poured in, donations, support. But Karen? Silent. Till the next night. I was dozing on the porch when I saw headlights creeping down the trail. A silver hatchback rolled to a stop near the fence. The door opened. Then the softest sound. A bleat. A tired, shaky, unmistakable bleat. I ran. Tinkerbell was tied to a tree, exhausted but alive. No note, no apology. Just dropped off, like lost luggage. I knelt beside her, heart pounding, hand shaking. She leaned into my touch. But Karen made one mistake. She thought returning the goat would erase her crime. She didn't know the trail cam was still rolling. The footage was crystal clear. Karen's face, hood down, dragging Tinkerbell back through the dark. I handed it to Gene the next morning. Time to knock on her door, he said. But Karen wasn't done. Later that same afternoon, Randy and I were repairing the outer gate when we heard a thunderous crash. A black pickup had barreled through the front entrance, splintering wood, tearing through fencing like it was paper. The truck sped off before we could catch the plate. No markings. Blacked out windows. This was no accident, I said. It's a message. Gene arrived again, jaw clenched, eyes dark. 3 criminal acts in 72 hours, he said. Arson. Theft. Destruction of property. Do we have enough to arrest her? I asked. We're close, he said. But if we act too soon, she'll spin this into political theater. We do it by the book. Then let's get everything we need, I replied. We installed new cameras, motion lights. I brought in two of my old military buddies to watch the ranch at night. Veterans who knew how to sit still, listen hard, and hit fast if needed. Even Becky's kids helped repaint the gate, this time with a handmade sign that read, Home of Freedom and one very brave goat. But the calm didn't last, because the morning after a letter showed up in my mailbox. This one wasn't anonymous. It was sealed with a gold HOA stamp and signed by a new name, Cheryl Phillips, Karen's sister. The letter read, You are hereby summoned to appear before the Whispering Pines HOA Compliance Board for review of your recent public conduct and unauthorized community events. I didn't live under the HOA. I didn't answer to them. But they were doubling down like all tyrants do when their grip slips. I showed the letter to Randy. He read it, spat into the dirt, and said, Then let's finish this. And I knew Chapter 4 wouldn't be quiet. It would be loud. It would be legal. And it would be final. Because there comes a point where you stop trying to reason with madness. You start building the case that brings it down. And I wasn't just fighting for my goat. I was fighting for every man who ever got pushed around by someone hiding behind rules they wrote for themselves. And we weren't going to lose. You ever watch a storm roll in, not just feel it, but watch it, knowing you've done everything you can to prepare, but still knowing in your gut that some winds can't be stopped? That's where I was. On the edge of something bigger than a neighborhood feud, deeper than a stolen goat or a burned shed. I was up against a system built not on law, but on fear. Fear that said comply or disappear. And now, with Karen gone to ground and her sister Cheryl stepping up to finish what she started, the storm had a new face but the same old stench of control. The letter she sent wasn't a suggestion. It was a declaration of war dressed up in formal language. I was summoned to appear before the Whispering Pines HOA Compliance Board for a mandatory hearing. Violation of community harmony, unauthorized livestock proximity, hosting unregistered guests, you name it, they threw it at me. But here's the thing, they had no jurisdiction. None. My ranch wasn't part of their HOA. That line on the zoning map was clear as daylight. But they weren't trying to win legally. They were trying to win publicly. Make it messy. Make it loud. Make it feel like I was the problem. So I leaned in. I didn't show up alone. That Wednesday morning, I pulled up to the HOA clubhouse, not in my old ranch truck, but in a black SUV with government plates. Two of my old Marine buddies rode shotgun, and a federal investigator from the state attorney general's office walked behind me holding a sealed folder marked evidence of harassment and criminal misconduct under investigation. Oh, and the press. They were already there, cameras rolling, because I'd made sure the world was watching this time. Inside, Cheryl sat at the head of the table, pearls tied around her neck like a noose she hadn't noticed yet. She had a stack of HOA bylaws in front of her and a sneer that looked like it had been practiced in front of a mirror. Senator McCoy, she said, voice sweet and cold, thank you for honoring our invitation. I nodded. Let's make this quick. You are here to answer for multiple community violations, she began, including disruption of tranquility, defiance of administrative guidelines, and hosting unsanctioned events involving vulnerable residents. I almost laughed. Vulnerable residents? You mean veterans? Like goat yoga events? She blinked. We've received complaints about noise, smoke, and alcohol on premises. I leaned forward. I don't live under your authority. I don't pay your dues. You don't maintain my land. And yet here I am, being tried by a board that has zero legal claim over me. She raised a hand. We're trying to protect the character of our community. I pulled out the deed. This land was designated agricultural and exempt from HOA annexation. That's the law, not your opinion. Behind me, Rachel, the young reporter who had covered the fire, the gate crash, the goat napping, stood with her cameraman. We're live across 3 counties, she whispered. Cheryl paled. But she wasn't done. She pulled out a new envelope and slid it across the table. Inside were photos, grainy, poorly cropped images from a telephoto lens. Veterans sitting by the fire pit. A child feeding Tinkerbell. One man lighting a cigar. Unlicensed gatherings, she said. Possible alcohol violations. Child endangerment. That was it. I stood. You want to smear me? Fine. But let's talk about the real crimes. Your sister burned my shed. She stole a federally registered therapy animal. She used intimidation, threats, and weaponized bylaws to terrorize an entire neighborhood. And now she's in hiding, while you parade as her replacement with the same tactics and a fresh coat of lipstick. Cheryl stood too. You have no right. I have every right, I snapped. I've earned that right in uniform and office, and as a citizen who refuses to be bullied. The room was dead silent. Then Rachel stepped forward. Do you deny your sister was involved in the fire and the abduction of the goat? Cheryl didn't answer. Instead, she turned to the board. I move we end this meeting immediately and file a civil action. But it was too late. The investigator handed her the folder. There's a formal inquiry into Whispering Pines HOA for abuse of power, coordinated harassment, and obstruction of justice. If you refuse to cooperate, you'll be subpoenaed. Cheryl's hands trembled. This is political persecution, she cried. This is justice, I said, and we're just getting started. That night, Cheryl resigned. Claimed media bias, fake news, you name it. But the damage was done. The board was cracked wide open. Documents leaked. Falsified fines. Secret meetings. Payments made to preferred contractors. Rachel Station ran the full report. Whispering Pines OA, Empire of Fear unravels. My phone rang for hours. Neighbors calling, apologizing, offering to help rebuild. Even the ones who'd signed the petition showed up at the ranch with coffee and quiet shame. But Karen, still no word. Until 3 nights later, Randy had gone into town for supplies. When he didn't return by sundown, I didn't panic. Not yet. But when 9 p.m. came and went, and he hadn't answered his phone, I got in my truck and drove the trail he always took. Near the split where HOA land brushed against the county road, I saw it. His phone. Smashed. Face down in the dirt. The old Navy decal still clinging to the back like a ghost. I picked it up slowly. My chest tightened. Someone had done this on purpose. I called Gene immediately. Randy's missing. His phone's been dumped. We're mobilizing now, Gene said. Deputies were dispatched. Roadblocks went up. Drones scanned the trails. The feed store confirmed Randy never arrived. We were officially in crisis. That night, I sat on the porch with my old shotgun across my lap, flashlight by my side. I didn't sleep. Not 1 minute. And just before dawn, headlights crept up the road. Becky stepped out, breathless. I found something, she said. In her hands was a bloody rag wrapped around a small, cracked walkie-talkie. On the back, a piece of masking tape that read Unit 3 Patrol East. HOA issued. It was under my back deck, she whispered. I think someone meant to hide it. I didn't speak. I couldn't. But I knew we had our link. Jean traced the unit to a man named Doug Harwood. Karen's cousin, former bouncer, known hothead. He'd been listed as volunteer HOA security for 6 months. Jean filed for a warrant. Deputies searched properties near the HOA clubhouse. And behind a row of rusted sheds inside an abandoned maintenance building, they found Randy, beaten, tied to a chair, dehydrated but alive. He'd been there for 36 hours. They kept saying I was loyal to the wrong side, he croaked. Said you were ruining everything. Doug tried to flee the state but was caught that afternoon in a stolen van. Inside was Karen's emergency HOA credit card and a burner phone with a text message draft that simply read, "It's done." He's not talking. Jean read him his rights and handed him off to federal custody. Karen's house? Empty. Her electronics wiped. Her car gone. She was now officially a fugitive. And that's when the FBI stepped in. The case was reclassified under organized community harassment, abduction, and conspiracy to intimidate a federal official. Headlines exploded. Senator's ranch war sparks federal probe. But even with the arrests, the footage, the documents, I didn't feel safe. Because power doesn't go quietly. It retreats. It waits. And then it strikes again. And sure enough, 3 nights later, in the middle of another storm, I woke to the sound of glass shattering. Someone had tried to break into the barn, and this time they weren't just after Tinkerbell. They were after me. But that's the next chapter. And friend, I promise you, it's the one where we stop playing defense for good. They always come back. That's something I've learned the hard way. In war, in politics, in life, people like Karen don't vanish, they reload. You can arrest their cousin, raid their house, expose every ugly corner of their empire, but as long as they believe the world owes them control, they'll keep coming until someone makes them stop. For good. 3 nights after Randy was rescued and Doug was hauled off in cuffs, I was starting to believe maybe, just maybe, we were over the worst of it. The ranch was quiet. Becky's boys were laughing again. Tinkerbell had gained back the weight she'd lost in captivity. Even Randy, ribs still bruised and stitched, insisted on manning the night shift patrol like the old warhorse he is. But peace has a funny way of making you vulnerable. You let your shoulders relax, just a little. You leave one window cracked open, and that's when the darkness gets in. It started with a crash. Not loud, not theatrical, just a soft, breaking kind of crash that makes your blood run cold. I was on the porch, shotgun across my lap as usual, sipping what was supposed to be my first relaxed cup of coffee in weeks. I stood up, flashlight sweeping toward the barn. Then came Tinkerbell's bleat, sharp panic, not her usual sleepy sound. Randy came limping out behind me, flashlight already in hand. Something's wrong, I said. We ran. Barn door slightly ajar. Tools scattered. Hoof prints, frenzied. But it was the back hatch that confirmed it. Someone had broken in. Again. We scanned the field, ready to pursue, but this time we weren't alone. Jean had stationed 2 deputies along the southern fence line, and when the figure bolted out from behind the shed, they lit him up like deer in headlights. "Stop!" one yelled. The guy ran. Didn't get 20 yards before he was tackled into the mud. We caught up seconds later. Not Karen. Someone else. Tall, male, thin, dressed in black, soaked to the bone and trembling with rage. Jean arrived moments later and helped haul the man to his feet. "Who the hell are you?" I asked. The man didn't answer. Jean pulled his wallet. Marcus Weller. Karen's attorney. It didn't make sense. This guy wasn't a foot soldier. He was the man who defended HOA lawsuits for years, slick as an eel and twice as cold. He should have been in a courtroom, not crawling around my barn at midnight. Jean searched his bag, bolt cutters, blueprints of my ranch layout, including Tinkerbell's pen, a burner phone, and a flash drive. He was trying to take the goat again, Randy muttered. "Why?" Jean asked. That's when Weller finally spoke. "You made her desperate. You humiliated her. She just wanted to protect what's hers." "What's hers?" I snapped. This ranch was never hers. This goat was never hers. She doesn't own anything or anyone. But then Weller said something that made every hair on my neck stand up. "She's waiting for you. At the Overlook. Said you'd come. Said you'd want to see the truth." Jean's eyes locked on mine. We knew the place. The Ridge Road Overlook. Isolated. High ground. No cell reception. A place people go to scream or disappear. It reeked of trap. But I wasn't about to back down. We geared up. 2 trucks, 3 deputies, me, Randy, and Jean. Tinkerbell stayed behind under Becky's care, inside a locked gate with 2 of my security men on guard. No more risks. The drive was silent. Rain pounded the windshield. Lightning cracked overhead. By the time we pulled up to the overlook, it was just after 1 a.m. The place looked empty. Then we saw her, standing near the edge of the cliff in a long black coat, soaked to the skin, hair wild, eyes glowing with something between fury and madness. Karen Phillips. The Queen had returned. "Hello, Daniel," she said, like we were old friends. "You brought guests." "You didn't say I had to come alone," I replied, stepping forward. "But clearly you had something to say." She laughed. It was sharp, ugly. "I built this neighborhood. I chose every mailbox, every bush, every damn porch swing. And then you came in with your goats and your war stories and your sympathy, and they stopped listening to me." "I didn't take anything from you," I said. "Yes, you did," she screamed. "You made them love you. You made me invisible. Even Doug, even my sister said you were the future. After everything I built." Lightning flashed. She looked like a ghost holding on to her last thread of reality. "You abducted a man," I said. "You set fire to my barn. You tried to take a therapy goat. You terrorized this town because no one wanted to play by your rules." She raised a trembling hand. "You think you're the hero? You're just another man with a title who thinks the world owes him space. Well, I won't let you win. I'll burn it all down first." And then she pulled out a small black remote. My heart seized. Jean shouted, "Back!" Karen pressed the button. "Nothing." She pressed again. Still nothing. "That device was jammed the second you stepped into range," Jean said calmly. "We've got tech in the truck." "You're not blowing anything up tonight." Karen screamed, dropped the remote, fell to her knees in the mud, pounding the ground like a child denied candy. "This was mine," she sobbed. "All of it." Jean cuffed her. Karen Phillips, former HOA president, arrested for conspiracy, arson, abduction, and more. But just before she was hauled into the truck, she twisted her neck around and hissed at me, "This won't stop them." "Who?" I asked. She just smiled, wild and broken. "You'll see." And maybe she was right. Because 2 mornings later, another letter arrived, sealed with gold. Signed not by Karen, not by Cheryl, but by the new acting board. A man named Frank Dillard, previously silent, now emboldened. The letter demanded my appearance at a mandatory compliance arbitration. Listed were new infractions, excessive media exposure, unauthorized expressions of political ideology, and community destabilization. It was nonsense. But it wasn't over. So I walked into that clubhouse one last time, not as a senator, not as a neighbor, but as a man who was done being polite to tyranny. Randy walked beside me. Becky and her boys waited outside with handmade signs. Tinkerbell, safe at the ranch, now wore a new vest. Veteran's companion, not HOA property. I brought Rachel and her camera crew. I brought the evidence folder. I brought the law. Frank tried to speak. I didn't let him. I stepped up and said, "Enough. You don't own the people who live here. You don't own me. You don't get to control lives through fear and fines. HOAs were created to maintain, not to rule. You forgot that." I handed him the folder. "This contains documentation of every abuse this board has committed. Falsified fines, backroom votes, hidden surveillance, and now criminal collusion with a fugitive." Then I turned to Rachel. "We're live." She nodded. Camera light on. "This isn't just my fight," I said. "This is every American's fight. Every vet, every farmer, every man who just wanted to be left alone. We have let pettiness masquerade as policy. We have let Karens run kingdoms. But no more. Not here." The room went silent. Then applause. From neighbors. From former board members. From silent men who finally had enough. The board resigned by sunset. The HOA was placed under state audit, new elections called. And I I went home, sat by the fire with Tinker Bell in my lap and Randy at my side, sipping tea that finally tasted like peace. That night, Becky's youngest son hung a sign on the ranch gate, painted by hand, crooked letters and proud strokes. Senator's Ranch, home of freedom and one very brave goat. I left it up because that's exactly what it was and what it will always be. So if you're out there reading this, watching this, listening, know this, they don't win. Not if you stand up, not if you speak out. Sometimes even a goat can hold the line. And sometimes that's all it takes.